Want to do it? Let's do it live. Let's go.
This our journey. The vision is ours. Everything pure. Everything.
Well, we're back at it and going back into the recap, or just to recap, we'll go back and say coming out of high school, out of New York, after returning and going through, you know, three other high schools in Virginia and making my way back to New York, and finally realizing that, this is what I'm doing. My reality is I'm going to the military, regardless of what else is going on around me, regardless of what else anybody might think is best for me. I have a plan. I have faith in my plan, and I believe in self enough to make this move. So uh, I graduate high school, and I essentially proceed to look at my options. Right off the bat, it's not necessarily um, in my best interest to join the Marine Corps and follow in the footsteps of my father, because I ended up talking to a recruiter and seeing that there's a lot of things that um, the Marine recruiter wasn't willing to divulge, or wasn't willing to, at least in that particular instance, that particular recruiter in that recruiting station. I won't say any locations or names, but it was in New York. And I think the recruiter just didn't realize the seriousness that I had, and the dedication that I was gonna come with. But nobody does. You don't know when you're dealing with a recruit, especially a young kid, um, what exactly it is they want to do. Mind you, at that time I wasn't a young kid. I had spent a few years working. I had spent a few years doing odd end jobs and learning skills outside of the military. Everything from a pool tech to overnight stock to warehouse stocker to cement masonry and brickwork. Um, so with that being said, I had a few skills and trades under my belt. I did like a semester of JUCO at Suffolk Community College out east. Um, and I just was making my way and I was figuring things out. With that being said, I knew that the military was the way forward, and I finally took that step. Not in the step that in the direction I thought I was going to go with the Marines, but I ended up going with the Air Force. So, a lot of people would think that's a great change or shift in dynamic. Like, how'd you go from the Marines to the Air Force? But for me, it was a no-brainer. After I talked to the Air Force recruiter, everything made sense. So I came in the Air Force. I came in a career field at the time, or I came in open mechanical, which gave you a whole um, category of jobs in a mechanical capacity that you could choose from, and you chose that once you got to basic training. So you were going through the process of basic training, and one day you got pulled into an auditorium, and it was like, "Hey, pick your job today." And I ended up going with 2T2, which is a area porter, um, or port dog. Port dog is the go by, and the name that was given to this career field, because constantly working out of an aerial port, there's no other word that describes that job like port dog. Um, Intelligent, loyal, always on point, and always there when needed. It's just essentially what that career field can be summed up as, in handling any business at an aerial port, from loading, maintaining, to manifesting passengers and cargo, and then driving heavy equipment throughout the base, throughout the flight line, and just loading the cargo that needs to get from point A to point B, whether it be for warfighting capacities or for just day to day travel reasons from base to base. Uh, yeah, it's a great career field. I had a great time in it. But with that being said, I knew shortly after joining and after doing that career field for just a little bit of time that I wanted to do more. So at my second duty station, after leaving McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey, I got stationed at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, the DMV area. So I found myself back in that DMV, um, DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
Did you still have roots there? Whenever you,
Yeah,
yeah.
I still had friends, I still had acquaintances, and I still had roots there. But the majority of my roots at that point were have always been New York. Uh, but with that being said, I was coming from the military system, so going back into the military system, you would have thought I would see and know a lot of people. But as it turned out, I didn't know a whole bunch. A lot of those kids that I was in school with had ended up joining the military and going forward. But I think I could say I can count on one hand the amount that I ran into while I was back in that area. Um, but it was a good experience. Once again, I felt myself back in a place where I was familiar and having a ton of fun and doing the job. But what I did do while I was there was I went and I took the pass test, which is a test that allows you to test your aptitude or your physical ability to pursue a pipeline in the special tactics career fields in the Air Force. So special tactics in the Air Force are comprised of CCT, um, combat weather at the time. You had pararescue, and then you had SEER instructor. So you had a couple options. CCT, um, just FYI, is a combat controller. Um, and they can do anything from warding in aircraft to calling airstrikes. And there's a lot more to it, but that's the gist of it. It's essentially boots on ground, an individual who can shoot, move, communicate, and communicate with higher in the form of aircraft and talk them on target from below and bring down rain from above.
From above, yeah.
So a very respectable career field. And at the time I saw it and I was like, yeah, that's it. At the time, mind you, I didn't know much about special tactics, special forces, any special genre of um, combat role. So for me, it was like eyes wide open, like I'm listening. And like I said, I went and I tried out and I took the pass test. And that was like the precursor to saying, okay, this guy can do an open swim for 500 meters. This guy can do an underwater swim for 25 meters. This guy can run 2 miles in under, I believe at the time it was 13 minutes or so.
Damn!
And this guy can do 10 or more pull-ups, and obviously push-ups and sit-ups. You had to hit those marks. So once you were able to accomplish that, it was like a green light to say, okay, this is a viable candidate for this career field, these genre of career fields, special tactics. Um, that opportunity was short-lived because what I realized when I returned back to my squadron and left the Pentagon where I took that test was that my career field was locked in and there was no out calls, only in. So in other words, you weren't getting out of that career field unless you had been blessed off by a commander or a command team that you were assigned to, saying, okay, this person, we're okay with this person being a loss and cross training into another career field. Uh,
And so, as a real quick, man. So, as like a man of color,
mhm.
what makes you decide, or what interested you in special operations, special tactics? Like, what? oriented your mind in that azimuth
Right.
to begin with?
Yeah.
What was that specific thought? Yeah.
So for me specifically, it was looking at the nature of the work, looking at what was going on at the time, and just realizing that there were opportunities to be challenged more. And I've always been up for challenges, and I've always, yeah, I've just, you can't show me something and say, hey, this is over here, and then also say, but this is over here.
I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. I need it!
Mm.
And then you can't show me something else either and say, this is also over here. Um, I have a little bit of ADHD or ADD, or, you know, the mentality of I wanna do so many things. I want to be a part of so many things. So when you show me that something over here is harder than something over here, or something over here is gonna be a process to get to, I'm absolutely up for the challenge.
Yeah.
So that's really what it was. I saw that there were other challenges, and I was like, okay. That being said, there was also a reality that was prior to going to that base and getting stationed there. I hadn't done one aspect of, or one facet of the career field, which was latrines. And I found myself doing that quite a bit. And latrines, for those of y'all that don't know, is essentially the restroom of the planes that we serviced, as far as loading cargo and everything else that we did within those planes. They also had latrines that had to be serviced. So I found myself anywhere from 5 to 6 times a month on the flight line, hooking up to planes with a hose on a vehicle that had a huge tank that had a capacity of, I think, 350 gallons. Don't quote me on the exact specs of that truck, but you would essentially clean the tank on the plane and then flush it, and that truck would essentially capture all of that waste. At the end of the day, you figure on an 8 to 10 hour shift, you probably dump that truck 2 to 3 times, 4 times maybe. It just depends on the day and how many planes you service, but that's 4 times a day. You know, having that that interaction with.
Hell no, to the no, no, no. Hell to the no.
Right? So
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you talk about,
yeah.
when people talk about jobs and dirty jobs and shows like that I've watched, and that job definitely was on there, right?
Yeah.
It's a job.
You said there got to be something better than this.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's not the whole career field or the whole job, but that aspect of the job, I don't know too many people that you'll talk to that won't agree. Like, no, literally, it's a job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But with that being said, it teaches you to to just have a certain amount of respect, because you're essentially doing a hazmat task. You're dealing with human waste.
Yeah.
And at the time, just think about this. You come into service and you choose open mechanical genre of work that you think you're gonna get, and then in the description you never get the full description of what you're gonna be doing. Like,
Yeah.
the jobs that y'all have done, did you get the full description?
No. No.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you talk about withholding information or not being given the full picture, that was something that absolutely was not. It's not something you're gonna market, because you're not gonna get too many people that are gonna say, "Yeah, I want to do that." After they hear, "Yeah, you're also gonna, service bathrooms on planes." It's just not.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it wasn't the deal breaker,
Mm.
but it most definitely put me in the mindset of, okay, I'm gonna rethink whether I want to continue to do this for the next. At that point, I had 4 years left on my enlistment, so long, yeah, that's the skinny of it. But at that point, what I also realized was I wasn't gonna be able to cross train, so I was gonna have to continue to do this job.
Mm.
And then I regrouped, and in regrouping, I realized that I could do what's called Blue to Green or Palace Chase. Palace Chase at the time was going directly from active duty to guard service in the Air National Guard. And a lot of people at the time were doing it because at the time the Air Force was downsizing. They didn't need people. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be in the guard. I wanted to continue to pursue service and I wanted to continue um to do a job in the military, but not necessarily that job anymore.
Mm.
So what I found was Blue to Green. Blue to Green gave me the ability to transfer from the Air Force to the Army. And a lot of people, gave me flack. They were like, hey,
Stop it. Get some help.
man, you're going backwards. And I actually had friends who had been in the Army and transitioned to the Air Force. And they were like, I was so fortunate to be able to do that. And, the time frame that I did it in, it was everything.
Yeah.
And they gave me a lot of flack for that, but at the end of the day what I told them was if I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve, I'm willing to pursue it by any means. I'm willing to pursue it here, I'm willing to pursue it there, I'm willing to pursue it anywhere where there's a higher calling and there's the ability to climb.
To climb, yeah.
And that's not that the Air Force didn't have that ability, it's just that at the time my circumstance had me locked into that career field. And that was just not something I was willing to stand by and just wait to change.
Yeah.
I wasn't willing to wait for it to change. I wasn't willing to wait to see if a commander would come in to command and say, well, you know what, I'll let you go because, yeah, I feel like, yeah, I'll let you go. I wasn't willing to wait for somebody to tell me what I could or could not do. So I took the opportunity and I seized that opportunity and said, hey, I know a guy that's recruiting in the Army. I was introduced to him and I was like, hey, you know about this program? He's like, give me a week. And he looked into it and come to find out, he also had aspirations to pursue more and
Yeah.
go into,
Yeah.
a special operations capacity. And we end up in the special forces qualification course at the same time. So we both end up becoming Green Berets.
Thoughts.